Great. Perfect. So I might just take over. Let me share my screen quickly. I think it's all good, right, Alfonso? Can you give me a thumbs up? All good. Great. Thank you so much for inviting us to talk about Inyova and impact investing today. I'll keep the intro short, but we would like to tell you a little bit more about impact investing and how can capital change the world. And as Alfonso said, maybe we just start with a quick presentation of ourselves. Aurélie, if you want to take the floor.
Sure. Hi. Nice meeting you, everyone. So I'm an impact analyst at Inyova. My job is basically to analyze the company and look at how sustainable they are. So I'm super interested in circular economy in general. And then a bit on the private side, I really like traveling. And then I realized there's so many night trains in Europe that makes traveling a bit more sustainable. So I'm a big fan of that, of night train traveling. Yeah, that's me. Mathilde, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mathilde. I'm part of the marketing team here at Inyova. I'm a marketing lead. Been with Inyova for about 2 years and a half now. I will consider myself a startup enthusiast. So when I started my career 6 years ago, I actually started my career in Australia, and I was working in tech startups already, and that love for startup has only grown since. I'm also an investor myself. Do consider myself a techie. And as already said, if you work at Inyova, you do have to care about the environment somehow, obviously. And so I'm also a zero waste warrior. It's really lovely to meet you all online, offline. And yeah, let me maybe just tell you a bit more about what we will talk about today. So we thought we might start the presentation by setting some ground knowledge, let's say, and just explaining you what impact investing actually is. We'll dig into what does Inyova do. We'll also show you how you can invest with us in general, but how we function, like what is special to a company. Then I will hand over the floor to Aurélie, who will go more into detail on why Inyova creates impact and how we're different from other providers that might be on the market. We'll try to keep it like maybe 30 minutes long so that you have time to ask us all the questions you want about investing, sustainable investing, anything. So let me maybe just start by the beginning and answering this question, what is impact investing? There's a lot of buzzwords going on, like sustainable investing, impact investing. So yeah, I think maybe the one thing I'd like you to understand today, or maybe remember, is that every investment has an impact, even the money on your bank account. I think that's something that I did not fully realize. I mean, there's a lot of things that we know by now, like how what we eat has an impact on the world, how we dress has an impact on the world. But the sad truth is the money that you have on your bank account and the way you invest also has an impact on the world. And again, before I joined Inyova, in my head, and probably like a lot of you, I had a savings account that my parents opened when I was 17, very classic. And in my head, I just thought, yes, the money is there. It will be there when I need it, and it's fine, you know, it just stays there. The truth is obviously, so of course the investment have impact, but also the money on your bank account, because the banks are just using that money. It's a lot of liquidity for the banks, and they can invest that money. Problem is, you don't necessarily know how they invest it. I mean, actually, you don't know at all how they invest it, and sometimes you just realize in the newspaper that UBS has been investing like trillions of dollars in exploring new oil places. And of course, this money is coming from somewhere. And most of the time, it's actually coming from the savings account that you have. So maybe just one thing to always remember, the money in your bank account and all the investment you do have an impact. And what is also important to know is the capital, where the capital goes today determines how we live tomorrow. There's a lot of examples in history in general, but the decisions we make today and the impact we have today will influence tomorrow. And you can see that very easily with trains in the past century. I mean, it's because people decided that trains had a future and believed that train would be the next big thing, and they started investing in it. Well, at the time, it was mainly like a lot of rich people investing in trains, but that really developed the industry. But more recently, renewable energy, if you look at solar panel, the reason we have so many solar panels today is 10 years ago, people decided, okay, this is going to be the next big thing, and we're going to put money behind. And maybe the most eccentric example is space travel. You see today as well that with all of the eccentric billionaires that we have, they've just decided, okay, space travel would be the next big thing, and I want to invest in that. And so automatically this industry will develop. The industry will develop, the companies will develop, because if you flow capitals towards companies that are working on sustainable solutions, then the future will have a different face than if all the capital today goes to oil companies or this kind of thing. So all that to say that what we do today with our money has an impact in the future, and it's really our role to decide what this direction is going to be. And as you probably know, and I hinted towards that, right now the capital is not really where it needs to be. So to reach the UN sustainability goals, they will need approximately $2.5 trillion per year, and we're very, very far from that. So it's a whole economic change that we need, and a whole financial change that we need, and finance has a really big role to play. And this is a bit all these thoughts that brought Inyova to do what we do today, because how can we shift so much capital towards creating a better world when you know, it always comes down to, like, you're just an individual, how can you have an impact? But the truth is, if every single individual puts their money to good use, then we can have an impact. Okay, so that brings me to actually what is impact investing, because I've been repeating this word forever. And I get the confusion often that people say, okay, it sounds great, I want to invest in sustainable projects, but does that mean basically I just give my money away and nothing will come back? And the importance of impact investing is the combination of the two. So basically, it's an investment that is made with the intention to generate a social and environmental impact, but also financial return. So if you're just investing, most of the time, you don't really care about what you invest in, you will just look at your returns. If you donate to a charity, for instance, or if you support a project, you will give your money, but you will not care about the returns. Impact investing is really the two. So it's preparing for your financial future by investing and caring about returns, obviously, but it's also caring about the future of the planet and caring about the impact you have with your money. So very different from a charity, very different from like the basic just investment without thinking too much in what you invest in. And so really the reason Inyova existed in the first place was to answer this simple question: what if investing could be about purpose and a better world, as well as about return? Because the truth to be told, if you're really serious about impact investing, there's not that many options. If you're a normal person like you and me, and you have, you know, maybe you have a decent salary, maybe you have some savings, but that's pretty much it. There's not that many options, because you can be investing in green funds, for instance, that are cheap, that are pretty universal, I would say. Which would be the normal entry door, but you don't really have an impact. And most of the time, there's a lot of greenwashing in the funds. And then you could be thinking, okay, I really want to have an impact, so maybe investing in a sustainable startups that is going to develop the next big thing or really have an impact is a solution. The problem is you will have to have a lot of money. You cannot just, as an individual, invest in a startup, and it's super risky as well. So we try to find a solution that is not crazy risky, like investing in a startup, that is also more transparent than investing in a fund. And our idea was basically, what if everyone could be an impact investor? Which kind of brings me to my second part on what is Inyova, how do we do this, how are we different from other competitors, and how you can combine this like purpose and your values with your money, basically, and also preparing for your future, because you're all going to be soon working, and you're soon going to be making money, I guess, for the first time in your life, and you're going to have some money on the side. And so how do you put that into good use? How do you prepare for your future? Yes, so let me switch to the next part and tell you about what Inyova does. And I guess this is very much towards our mission of turning impact investors, millions of people, into impact investors. We want to make investing into a social movement for a better world. So the idea is not only to put some purpose behind investing, it's also making it easy, because you can't turn millions of people if you have a very complex product, or if you have never been an investor before and most people are a bit afraid to invest for the first time. So we try to make it easy and purposeful, let's say, to invest with us. And so what we stand for, you might have wondered what Inyova actually means. So Inyova means invest in your values. And we have three main pillars that differentiate us from others, and where I think we have an offer that is a bit different from other people on the market. So we do truly sustainable impact investing. I won't go too much into detail because that's going to be Aurélie's part, really, to just explain how Inyova does impact, that we're not just greenwashing people, basically. But this is very different, again, from funds, like the classic funds you can see out there. The second part that I will go more into detail is about personalized portfolio that fits your values, and that's really important to us. So your portfolio will be unique to you, and your portfolio is based on what you care about and also what you don't want to have in your portfolio. So that flexibility, that personalization is often something that is completely lacking in general option you have. If you go to the bank and you say you want to invest sustainably, most of the time, maybe you've given the choice between 2 or 3 funds, but you don't know really what is in there. And also you can't control. You can't say I want this company, maybe I don't want this company. It just doesn't really exist. And the last part, also very dear to us, is the full transparency. So as I said before, if you do ask your banker, okay, but I want to invest in this fund, so what is in this fund? Most of the time it doesn't really have the answer. So you probably can see the first couple of index and maybe some companies the index are based on, but that's pretty much it. And because if we want to empower people to make their own decision and to make the world a better place, they have to have this transparency and the control on where their money is going. All that sounds great, but I will show you some product screenshot that can explain exactly how we do it. What I want to challenge you on is not necessarily investing in Inyova, but it's this kind of question that I want you to ask yourself when you're about to invest. Whatever option you choose out there, is it transparent enough? Is it personalized enough? Does it fit your values? That's the kind of thinking you should have when you want to start investing. So the main difference between Inyova and funds and other options you have out there is that basically we do direct investments in company. We don't invest in funds. We invest directly in stocks that belong to companies, and only companies that we've selected. I'll talk about the Inyova universe, what we call the universe, in a second. But basically, you cannot invest in any companies. That's companies we've selected on sustainability and financial criteria. And we allow you to invest directly in this company through stocks. So you have the transparency to know exactly where your money is going into. And the second part is we also invest in green bond projects that Aurélie will talk about a bit more later. That's the two things that you will see in your portfolio: green bonds and companies and stocks, sorry. So let's say you are interested and you do want to build a strategy. I would definitely recommend you, whether you want to invest with Inyova or not, to create a strategy with us, because that's free. You don't have to invest later, but at least you get a feel for how the algorithm work, how we select the companies, etc. And then it can give you a good idea of what company you'd like to invest in. So even if you decide to go for someone else after, I would totally encourage you to just create a strategy. It's probably 2 minutes long. And then if you've never invested before, it's a really nice feeling to just see, okay, that doesn't look that complicated and I can probably also do it. So the first step, which is the values part, so invest in your values, we ask you to pick your impact topics. So we have 3, we have handprint, footprint, and exclusion criteria, and that's really the first thing you see on the app. This is really for us to understand what you care about. And handprint, footprint, and exclusions, so we have these 3 things, which is also a bit new because a lot of companies will focus on the footprint. This is why, and that's a true story, if you invest in green funds, sometimes you can find McDonald's at the top of the company you're investing in, which seems kind of counterproductive or counterintuitive at least, because that's supposed to be the green fund. So why is McDonald's in there? The reason is a lot of funds and banks only look at the footprints. What we call the footprint is basically what the company, how the company operates, how the company supply chain works, etc. And so McDonald's is probably really good at operation, and maybe the way they operate is very sustainable compared to other competitors in the industry. So McDonald's might be the best, but at the end of the day, the purpose of McDonald's is to put on the market products that are not very sustainable. And this is why we have this distinction. We put way more emphasis on the handprint, which is basically what service and products the industry, the company creates. This is really important because then we completely filter our universe based on that, so that the company that end up in your portfolio inherently have a handprint that we deem positive to the world. So, but you choose. For instance, we have renewable energy, plant-based food. We still have the footprint. So if you're really interested in gender equality, you can add that as an extra layer. So companies in your portfolio will have that gender lens, making sure that you support companies that support gender equality. And then you have exclusion criteria, which is the more classic option that sometimes you see in other funds, where you can remove things. Like if you, for instance, choose no animal testing, but you've chosen as a handprint topic, pandemic control, there you will have a clash because then a lot of pharmaceutical companies still test on animals. So this is really to give you an extra layer of like, all that sounds great, but I still want to have that layer where I make sure that no company in my portfolio do nuclear or animal testing. So that's the first step. You tell us about your values, what you care about, which is also a good exercise for yourself to just think, okay, what are actually the industry that I want to support, or like the theme that I want to support. The personalization is something that I was mentioning earlier. Then that's the second step. Basically, well, I've kind of moved a bit quickly. You will select your topics and you will also answer a few questions about yourself. So how much money, well, at this point, no, you will tell us how much money you want to invest, how long you want to invest. We'll ask you a couple of questions based on your age to know how much risk you want to take. And then once you've given us this information, you will be matched with about 30 to 40 companies. And then at this point, which is really unique to Inyova, you can personalize your portfolio. So you see the 30 to 40 companies we match you with. At this point, you can always say, well, I don't like this company for whatever reason. I applied to the internship and they didn't want me. Whatever. You can absolutely remove that company from the universe. And you can also you can wish list some other companies you like, and the algorithm will try to add this company to your portfolio. So you have the full transparency on all the companies you can invest in. And then once you're happy with the strategy, basically you can open your account and invest. I'll show you a screenshot a bit later of what the dashboard looks like, etc. But that's how it works. I want to go a little bit more into detail because that sounds great and all of that, but how does this algorithm I keep talking about works? And maybe this slide just sum it all up. You have the Inyova universe. I won't talk too much about it because Aurélie is really our guardian of the universe, and make sure that we have good companies in the universe. But basically, this is a big part of what we do. We select companies based on sustainability criteria, but also financial criteria. I always come back to that example of the startup, but in our portfolio, you will not find startups, for instance. We deem them a bit too risky for first-time investors and also investors that will invest smaller amounts. So you will see companies that are listed on the stock exchange, and there's a couple of financial criteria that help us select this company. So you have this universe. Based on this universe, you give us your sustainability criteria, which is what we just seen. So handprint, footprint, exclusion, and the algorithm start matching you. So matching you with the company which fits your values. And then obviously there's this last component, which is the financial risk criteria. Because when you build your portfolio, we'll also tell you, as I said earlier, how much money do you want to invest? How long do you want to invest? How old are you? How much knowledge do you have about investment? And based on that, we can then put more or less risk in your portfolio. What does this mean is if you want to take a lot of risk, we'll probably match you with a lot of shares, so company stocks, because they're a bit more volatile. If you want to have a very conservative strategy, then we'll probably match you with green bonds, who are historically a bit less volatile, but also less returns. And so the algorithm take all that into consideration, both the risk and the impact, and basically come up with your personalized, diversified portfolio. Again, if you want, I encourage you to just create that, just to have an idea of what an investment platform can look like. Yeah, and I think that's already it about Inyova. I will let Aurélie dig into how do we create impact, basically.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. Yeah, so you understood it. Inyova helps to be an impact investor by creating an investment strategy that includes both stocks and bonds. But how does Inyova actually create impact? What are the mechanisms that turn an investor into an impact investor? Can you pass the slide, please? So we talked about creating impact. The first question to ask is, what is impact? Impact is a change in the world caused by an action. It can be positive or negative, caused by any kind of actor. It can involve many mechanisms. Impact is just a change that is due to an action. And here we'll be talking about positive impact purposefully made by an investor. Mathilde, please. Thank you. So now that this is clarified, let's look at what is investor's impact. Let's go back to what Mathilde just explained earlier. With Inyova, you invest in public stock, meaning that you buy shares in large, well-established companies that often do business all around the world. And with their business, the company have an impact on the world. Vestas bring more green energy to the world, or Beyond Meat encourages and facilitates the consumption of plant-based food. So those companies have impact on the world with a product and services. And on my little graph here on the left, this is the arrow that's on the right. So from company to the world. So what we're actually trying to answer is, what is the impact of the investor? So from the investor to the company, the arrow, oh, sorry, I said the arrow on the left before. So now we're trying to explain the arrow on the right. Oh, sorry. We're trying to explain the arrow on the left. The impact of the company is from the company to the world on the right. So remember, first of all, that you are buying public stock. You do not buy stock from the company itself, you buy it on the stock market. And it previously belonged to another investor, not to the company. So you're not actually giving the company some money, you're just buying it off from someone else. And this actually makes you an owner, one of the many owners of the company. And this already says something, actually, whether you want to be an owner of the company. If it's a really bad company, if it's specialized in all, I don't know, you might not want to become an owner of this company. And this already sends a message of your choice. And well, stock is one instrument, but there are many other instruments out there where you can acquire part of a company. And in all cases, when you decide to invest, you are now an owner of this company. You can influence, and this is where the impact starts. You can be just no, hold on, stay there. Thank you. If you can just be a passive owner of a share, then you're not creating impact. You just have that share. But you can actually be an active owner and actually influence that company. And an active owner can do a lot of things. It can help the growth of the company. It can help the company scale. It can help them reach out to more customers. And it can also encourage the improvements. It can encourage a shift in the strategy. It can force the company to think on the long-term future. So this is all the power that an investor can have if it owns a share in the company. So to summarize this, by buying a stock, you are by no means giving money to the company, but you're buying the right to influence that company. And then it's all about using the right and the power that investors have to make the company change. Now you can pass. So you must now be wondering, what are the mechanisms that exist to create impact? And I will tell you about 3 mechanisms that we have at Inyova. The first one is signaling and substitution. And this is all about showing the companies what we want as impact investors. Before we dive into detail, let me just warn you that this is actually the weakest mechanism that we have. There has been many theoretical studies about this, but actually empirically, there's quite little evidence of how effective this mechanism is in creating impact. That being said, it's still a mechanism. So signaling is about communicating that as an investor, you want companies to be more sustainable. And you can communicate that in very different ways. You can be very direct, you can send a letter, or you can actually invest according to certain conditions and value. And for example, Mathilde showed you before that at Inyova, you can choose the topics that are important to you and then have companies that are aligned to certain criteria. And then if every investor at a large scale requests that company follow certain standards, then the companies know that they have to raise the bar and comply to those standards. And this is actually what is happening to a certain extent with ESG investing. Many investors have been requesting ESG investments, and now companies have to disclose their ESG information. And well, all of this can be called conscious capital, capital that is not just placed anywhere, but that goes specifically where the good things are done. And this is linked to substitution. Mathilde just told you that all capital has an impact. So, well, it depends on your bank, but the money that you saved may be invested somewhere you don't know, in an industry you don't want. So just realizing that and being conscious about the capital and then acting upon this actually is a way to encourage the improvements. So the first mechanism that we use at Inyova is to signal which values the investors have. And we can see that with our topic. And then we can just facilitate the conscious investment in green companies. Yeah, now you can pass. The second mechanism is active ownership. So you bought a stock, within Inyova. When you buy a stock, you buy a little part of the company. You're the owner of this company. You influence the company. And you have a say in the strategy and the decision making. And this part of the investors influencing the company is key. This is where the impact happens. Based on this, active ownership is actually quite straightforward. It means exercising your shareholders' right, and instead of remaining that passive investor. So active ownership means that you take part in the decision making. And to give you an example, every company in the stock market has an annual general meeting, an AGM, where the board members of the company are elected and major strategies are decided. And well, basically, and well, I'm simplifying this a bit here, every investor can participate in the AGM, and most importantly, they can vote. So Inyova this year will be participating to some AGM, and they will actually show what investors want and encourage this shift toward more sustainable activities and toward a better footprint or handprint, and think about this future. So the second mechanism is about using those ownership rights to influence the company to do more good. And then finally, a third mechanism, and very important, is additional capital. It's providing money that enable the project with positive impact. So far, I have only been telling you about investing in stocks, which are the shares of the company. Buying shares on the secondary market does not actually provide additional capital. I told you, you buy it from someone else, the company never sees that money. The shares just change hands. There are other ways to make investments. And with Inyova, for example, you can invest in bonds. You can view bonds as being a kind of loan from an investor to a company or government. With bonds, and green bonds in particular, you provide additional capital to support the growth of the company. And in our case, the money can only be used to specific projects that have a positive impact on the real world. And this is a really vital part of our impact as an investor. By providing that money via additional capital and via green bonds, you're financing the project from companies or government that are generating the positive change. This might be very blurred. Let me just give you an example of a green bond. If you can go to the next slide, thank you. So for example, the Republic of Chile issued green bonds. So green bonds can be used on very different green activities, from sustainable building to transportation. And the issuer, so the Republic of Chile in this case, have to provide very clear details on what they will use the money for. And this is the document you see on the right. In the case of Chile, Chile is a very, very dry country. Actually, the driest desert in the world is in Chile. And they're very much struggling with the water. So a lot of this money that's provided through the green bond will actually go for making better water infrastructure in Chile and manage the water a lot more sustainably. So we know when we're investing in green bonds, we know where the money goes and we make sure it's for good purpose. Very quickly, I can give you a second example, which, if you can, yeah, thank you, is UPM. So UPM is a forestry company. And so they manage forest mostly in Finland and Uruguay, and they do it in a sustainable way. And then the green bonds just enable them to buy more areas of forest. So once they buy it, then the forest is protected, is managed in a more sustainable way. We're sure that it's not going to be just cut down like suddenly. So this is a way to provide money to this company, is a way to make sure that they can buy more forest and more forest can be protected. And this is what green bond is. If you can go to the last, no, you can skip this one actually. Oh, well, I had a lot of examples. You can skip, sorry. Okay, so finally, additional capital can actually be a lot of different things. I told you about green bonds because this is what we do at Inyova, but you can also do microfinance, you can invest in startups, you can invest many different ways in a very direct way and just giving money to those good initiatives. And this is an investment that is doing good impact, positive impact. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, now is the time.
Thank you so much. I think we can start with the questions on the chat, right? So sure. The first question being, in which area would you recommend to invest if we want to support biodiversity? I guess is UPM a good example for that?
Totally, definitely. So biodiversity is a hard one. We're actually thinking of how to make a topic that's specifically on biodiversity, but it can be both a handprint and a footprint, in the sense that a company can really act to promote biodiversity, but it's also how much companies do not damage biodiversity with their activities. So it's also an area where companies are not necessarily reporting properly. So it's a big challenge to actually include biodiversity, but this is something that is very dear to us, and we're really trying to have a topic that's more linked to biodiversity. That being said, now, yeah, definitely choosing the sustainable forestry for earth biodiversity, and then clean water for marine biodiversity. Those are the two topics where you can be sure that you have an impact that is related to biodiversity. For clean water, I think we have a company, for example, that's Evoqua. So they do a lot of cleaning the water and filtering out many different components of the water that would be super damaging if it actually ended up in natural water. If the water was not filtered, if the components were not filtered out, then those pesticides, for example, would end up in the lake, and this is super damaging for the ecosystems. So those kind of companies that really do proper filtering, they really help not damaging the nature. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to the second question. What happens when you suddenly need your money that you have invested? Is it easy to get that money back fast when you have invested into stocks or green bonds?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's also one of our key thing at Inyova. Yes, you can get the money. So basically, In terms of fee, you're not paying any fee if you get your money back. That's one part of it. And the second part is you can absolutely get your money at any point. So when I say any point, it means that we just have to trade what you invested in and sell everything, which usually can take a week, but not more than that. So at any point you can decide that, we always have circumstances in life that change. And so we really wanted to have that flexibility for our impact investors. So yes, you can absolutely take the money whenever you want. You can take the full thing, you can leave some if you want. So yeah, the flexibility exists.
Yes, I even tried that, and I think it was even quicker, like 3 days. So it was really quick. So that was really good. But I should say that it is important that you keep your own cash on your bank account, at least a few months of expenses, and then invest. Okay. I like your investing approach very much. However, the interest rate of your product is about double as high as in traditional banks. How come? Is or isn't?
Yeah, I mean, good point. Good point. We definitely not the cheapest on the market. That's for sure. And and the reason for that is that basically what you've seen with the fact that we select companies and also the fact that you can select personally your stocks. This is why it's more expensive than other providers, because if you compare that to also funds in general, as I said, funds interest, fees will be much lower, to be honest, but it's because every fund is the same. So you can just, there's like thousands of people that just invest in the same fund. It's not personal, it's not transparent. The main difference for us is that we offer you that extra step. And that also means that because we do that, we invest directly in stocks, and there's a lot of work that goes behind, because we trade stocks, we sell stocks, and we have to work with a bank as well, in which you will create your accounts, and that allow us to trade all of these things. So that's why your fees are higher. Although I will say though that we have the advantage that if you look at our fees, when I'm saying your fees, so basically it depends on the amount you invest with Inyova. Most people will invest less than 50,000 Swiss francs. So then the fee would be 1.2% of the amount invested, which is higher, but everything is included. So when I say everything is included, you don't pay any fee when you take the money back. You don't take any fee when we rebalance your portfolio. So we do that once a year to just make sure that there's no stocks that become more important than the others. And all of these little things are actually things that banks tend to make you pay, but that's not the initial fee you see, which is also, by the way, something you should always put attention on. You probably will see fees that the bank will show you. They seem attractive. Definitely always read the fine prints, because all of these things add up if you want to take your money back, if you want to invest more, etc. And we want to be transparent. So yes, the fee is higher, but it includes everything we do, basically. Aurélie, tell me, you can always jump in. But
And then next question, as a student, I do not earn much money. Does it make sense to invest little money? For example, let's say I want to invest 100 per month. Does that make sense? Is there a minimum that you recommend?
Yeah, so it makes sense. With Inyova in Switzerland, you can start with a saving plan of 100 Swiss franc every month. So you can absolutely do that. We'll invest the money once you reach 2,000. But the reason why I think it's important to start with such a little amount, it's not so much about making now returns, but it's more about the mindset, I would say. Because the earliest you start investing, the more you have that mindset that every month you need to invest a little bit. And the truth is, after 5, 10, and 20 years, that's really when you see the power of the compound interest, so just the accumulated interest that you have on your portfolio. And I will say I pretty much regret I started investing late. Late. There's not one good moment to invest, right? It has to be right for you, and it has to be right with the money you have, because you should never invest money that you need on a day-to-day basis, right? It should be like surplus that you have and you don't need straight away. But I think the earliest you start, even if it's just small amounts, really helps you to break that barriers, that investing is complicated, that investing is risky, that you're scared of investing. So I can only recommend whatever you invest in to start as early as possible, because it gets you into that mindset, and you'll see that once you've started, it's so easy, it's not scary, and you just want to just keep going. And then the longest you invested, the better it is for your future, really.
And if I can add a small impact point of this, as soon as you're part of the community, it's already, you start having impact. So we don't have like super rich people necessarily investing, but if we're a lot of people, this shows how much it matters to the population, to everyone, that we do sustainable investment. So even if you join with a little, like not much money because you don't have that much yet, you just show that you're part of this big movement that is asking for more sustainable investment, for more transparency, for a better future. So it's already, just being part of it, even with a small amount, already has an impact.
And I think also on your app, it shows as well the impact that you're creating, like on how many football fields of forest do you own, or how much renewable energy you have produced with your stocks. So I think that's a really cool feature as well. Yeah, and like money compounds, so start early. Next question, how was the performance so far? Could you share some data?
Should I take that one already? Yeah, so, well, let me start by saying that no one can really promise you returns. And if you do go to a bank, I mean, anyone really that tells you exactly how much your investment is going to return, it's probably a lie, because no one knows. And the past year with COVID, and also now the Ukraine crisis, has shown us one thing: markets are just very unexpected. So I take whatever I'm telling you with a grain of salt. That being said, our portfolio I built with the diversification and the risk optimization that I've shown you. And in general, or like historical data, at least have shown us that if you invest in the stock market and you remain invested and you don't sell when everything crashes, in general, in the long term, the stock market has yielded a return of 5 to 6%. Just to give you like a number, again, all the strategy that you build are different. So some people will have higher returns because they wanted to take more risks, and some people will have lower return because they wanted to take less risk. But again, that's like at an instant eye, you know, and it can really depend on the company you invest in. So again, I can't promise you any kind of return. What I can tell you is that historically, the stock market has yielded return of 5 to 6%.
Do you use a benchmark to compare yourself to?
Aurélie, do you want to take that one, or no? Okay. Yeah. Yes. I mean, well, no, we don't. Actually, no, we don't. The returns are not the main priority of the portfolio anyway. You have that return side, but we don't want to, how do you say, like just, we can't have higher returns than the market. We try not to have lower returns. So yeah, we benchmark ourselves this way. When you create your portfolio, what is interesting to see, and that's probably goes back to your question, because everyone wants to see how much the money can develop. When you get your strategy, there's always a graph that shows you different case, because again, no one can predict the future, but you can see the best case scenario. If you remain invested for 5, 10, 20 years, you can see the average scenario, and you can see the worst scenario, which at least when I started investing with Inyova really helped me to just get a feel. And obviously with the graph, you can see that the longer you stay invested, the higher the return will be. But we don't have this is not a mission to try to beat the markets ever. We never try to trade. I mean, the trading is done, you know, for each portfolio, obviously, but we never try to beat the markets, because we also inherently think that beating the market is not a good strategy, and you should have a long-term strategy.
Okay. One question. Do you have a question from?
Just go on with that one.
Okay.
It's not that.
What is the risk we carry as an investor? What happens when the stock market crashes?
Yeah, so there's maybe one question that hasn't been asked, but I will answer anyway. In terms of risk, if you invest with Inyova, for instance, a lot of people ask me, like, you're a startup, that's great, but what if you disappear or you become bankrupt? So maybe I start with that risk. the risk is very low because actually the money that you invest is in an account under your name in our partner bank, which means that if we disappear, the money is not under Inyova. We have no control over, we cannot take the money back. You have to do that. And so basically the worst that can happen is if we disappear, the bank reaches out to you and tell you, do you want to stay invested in what you're invested now, or do you want to retrieve the money? So it's maybe something to get out of the way. The risk of us getting bankrupt has no impact on you getting your money back. Then the risk you're bearing, obviously, is that I'm just talking about long-term investment. So the risk that you have whenever you invest is that if you do need the money at a certain point and the market crashes at that point, this is the risk that you're bearing because you have to get that money back at a moment where your money is not valued a lot. Now, if you don't have that, and basically, as I said before, you've invested money for the long run and it's money you don't need right now, then the risk are pretty low because as long as you keep your investment, and as long as you know that in the long run, the market is going to go up, there's no risk. The risk appears obviously if you have a crisis and that's the moment you decide, oof, my portfolio is going down, I'm going to sell now. Then obviously you have losses and that's the risk you bear, pretty much.
And I think this is as well related to the next question and we need to start wrapping up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so is it better to invest one time or every month? And I think this is related to trying to not time the market because if the market crashes, your value goes low and then you can just buy every month. So you're buying at cheaper prices, which is actually good. So yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. No recommendation there, but if the market crashes and you decide to invest everything in one shot at that point, that's good. But that means that you're trying to time the market and you can be lucky and you can be unlucky. If you invest every month, then the risk is more spread out because you will be investing every month at different times when the market is at different low or high. So in terms of risk there, it might be less risky actually to invest every month. Yeah.
Okay, I have a last question or yeah, you go first, for sure.
If Inyova offers plans like for the moment when you want to get the money,
okay, the question was if Inyova offers plans of when you can get the money, when you can return the money back. And actually, no, I think it's static, but you can just take the money out whenever you want.
You know, is there plans how you can do because normally it's like you have some. I don't know if you can profit from that and do it in small pieces or you take all of it and together so we offer consultancy services.
Okay. Do you offer consultancy services of when is a good time to take the money out?
No. No, we're not licensed for it. We're not we don't do consulting. We're an asset manager, which means that also legally, we're not supposed to give you any advice. And I will add to that, the reason we don't do that is because we empower people to invest, but we won't try to make you beat the market. We won't try to promise you any returns. So that's not the purpose of what we do. There's a lot of financial advisor that exists. That's a different kind of licensing, but we are an asset manager. So we can, we can advise you when you do the strategy on, in general, tell you how investing works, how the company universe works. But at the end of the day, we put the power in your hands and you decide what you want to do with your money. And again, because we're not trying to time the market or beat the market, there's no real advice that we can provide you because the only advice we can give you is start investing as soon as you can and remain invested as long as you can, which I think is the main advice that I can give you.
I have a last question as well. Does the algorithm choose or kick out a company from my portfolio if they start doing dumb decisions like once in a while? Or repeated dumb decisions?
Not only the algorithm, humans are constantly looking at the companies. To give you an example, a couple of months ago, a company, Learning Technology Group, acquired another company, which were doing some activities related to nuclear warheads. So this is not okay for us. We wrote to them. They said that they would not divest soon enough. So we just removed the company from the universe and we'll customers are no longer invested in that company, and no one at Inyova can invest in that company anymore. And so we want to keep an eye on what's happening. We want to make sure that good companies remain good. And this is also part of the activism. It's if there's something wrong, we reach out to them and see how they can improve and what's the potential for improvement. So yeah, we like the impact team is doing this as the main job.
Okay, thank you so much. I think this was a very interesting lecture and event. Like, we've learned a lot. And wrapping up to the end, please don't leave. Please give us your feedback scanning the QR code and of this event, and so that everyone knows we are the AG Nachhaltigkeit, and as part of the AG Nachhaltigkeit in the University of Basel, we organize events or projects. In this case, this is the Sustainability Week, but also we are creating a sustainability map and app. The app is in process, the map is already online, and you can look into what kind of shops are sustainable in Basel and in the area. But as well, we've created a sustainable recipe book, a travel guide, and we are promoting the use of Ecosia in the university. So if you have any ideas of other projects that can make the university more sustainable, please feel free to join our team, or just join the monthly meeting that it's the last Thursday of every month. You can look for the website, and you can just join us on Zoom or in person. So thank you so much. I will leave this on for a while, and yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Second.